Hi, Founder fans. Jason here. Welcome to a read-along, a Federalist paper read-along. We are discussing now Federalist number 1. We've done a few of these read-alongs before. I thought it would be good fun to go through the Federalist papers. Now, we might not do all the Federalist papers. We'll do them in order, but we might spice it up and throw some other read-alongs in the middle. There are, after all, 86 Federalist papers, so if we did one a week, it would take us a year and a half, which I did writing them, but we'll see as we go along. I released a schedule earlier this week. I'm going to be releasing a schedule each week for all the videos and articles I'm putting out, so look forward to those. Some weeks maybe we'll do 2 Federalist papers, some weeks we'll spice it up. We'll see how it goes, but this is going to be a read-along of the Federalist paper. There is a link in the description below if you're interested in reading along with us. Of course, if you have any questions, if you're watching live, you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If you're watching in the future, I will be happy to answer them then too. I do read the comments after the fact, and let us know if they've unfrozen Walt Disney while you're at it. Anyway, let's get right to it. Let's read some Federalist papers. I'm going to pop up this other screen here. Whammy. Now, as I said, there is a link in the description below. I do have it on my website. For now, I have not yet set it up to have a page for all the Federalist papers, but I will at one point. As of right now, well, link in the description below. Federalist number 1, written by Alexander Hamzelot. October 27th, 1787. So you want to notice right off the bat that it is pretty early on, as they say, in the the Constitution was ratified back in September of 1787, on the 17th to be exact. So this is less than 6 weeks after the Constitution was actually signed, not ratified. Let me correct myself, signed. And there were some people arguing against it right away, which I'm sure Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay, who writes a few of them too, I'm sure they realized there'd be some pushback, but the overwhelming pushback that came immediately, maybe they weren't quite ready for that. But let's give it a go. Let's go through it. They are separated by paragraphs. I use the punctuation from the original writings and publication. I did leave out one thing. I will correct it later. These are all addressed to the people of New York. Hamilton, Madison, and Jay were all in New York at the time. They were writing to the people of New York because New York was considered an essential state to get on board. Right in the middle of all the other colonies, pretty big land-wise, population very much growing quickly, and a bit of a swing state, as you might be surprised to learn nowadays, was very open-ended whether or not New York would ratify or not. So, if I may clear my throat, we'll go through them one paragraph at a time, and then we'll reflect back. So, first of all, after a full experience of the insufficiency of the subsisting federal government, you are invited to deliberate on a new constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts which it is composed, the fate of an empire in many respects, the most interesting in the world. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reversed to the people of the country to decide. It seems to have been reserved to the people of the country to decide by their conduct and the example and the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may, with propriety, be regarded as the period when that decision is to be made, and a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind. A lot to unpack there. Hamilton comes out, you're invited to deliberate. He's saying, again, this particular, the first Federalist, and I have not read it in quite a while, about a year and a half, so I'm a little unprepared, but that's part of the fun. But he comes out introducing the new Constitution. Guess what? You get to ratify it or not. It's up to you. Now, he does say, the fate of the empire, and that's an important phrase because Hamilton very much wanted an empire. Not necessarily everyone in the colonies was excited for empire. Many of the Anti-Federalists, just like their little states, just the way they are. Looking at you, Rhode Island. Now, he said, nothing less than the safety and welfare of the empire, might be at stake here. And then he says something interesting. Very rare instances are people given the opportunity to create a government. Usually, as he says here, they either happen on accident or by force. Someone comes in and says, this is what we're doing. But the ability to establish a government, a good government, as he says here, from reflection and choice, it's a unique moment in history. It's one of the fun things about the American Revolution. It really is a unique moment in history. And if he gives his opinion that if we don't accept it, it will be the general misfortune of mankind. Anyone popping in, we just started the first paragraph, introducing Alexander Hamilton. Now, let's see what he has to say further in this first introduction to the Federalist and the Constitution itself. This idea, by adding the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism, will heighten the solicitude which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. Happy will it be if our choice should be directed by a judicious estimate of our true interests, uninfluenced by considerations foreign to the public good. But this is more ardently to be wished for than seriously to be expected. The plan offered to our deliberations affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too many local institutions, not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects extraneous to its merits, and of views, passions, and prejudices little favorable to the discovery of truth. Now, this is why I'm having this series, because these are very tough words to understand. 18th century language is difficult to understand, and what we really need to do is kind of go through it line by line and outline what is he actually saying here. So, just to go back, this idea, which he's referencing, hey, anyone just joined us? We're just getting started. We're going to get through this 18th century language together. This idea, by which he means the first paragraph, the new constitution we get to choose, by adding the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism, will heighten the solicitude which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. So, philanthropy, your patriotism, your pride of your country, your generosity, it will make you more understanding of how important this moment is. Happy will it be if our choices should, I'll highlight them for you guys. Happy will it be if our choices should be directed by a judicious estimate of our true interests, uninfluenced by considerations foreign to the public good. So, happy will it be if we're foreign to the public good. So, this is a tough one. Even in the 18th century language, I've read this before too, and it's still tough for me. Basically saying what he was saying before, we really need to work hard to make sure we do this right. But this is to be more ardently wished for than seriously expected. It's basically saying it's not necessarily all that easy to be open-minded when choosing a government because it's such a rare occasion. The plan offered to our deliberations affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too many local institutions, not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects extraneous in its merits, and views, passions, and prejudices little favorable to the discovery of truth. There is so much, he's saying there's so much encompassed under ratifying the Constitution that you need to look at each individual part very specifically. And that is what he and John Jay and James Madison are about to do. Just like the Anti-Federalists are simultaneously doing. Really unpacking all the little details that are making up this Constitution. Now, we'll go to the next paragraph. Among the most formidable obstacles which the new Constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the obvious interest of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of the power, emolument, and consequence of the offices they hold under the state establishments. So basically, there are certain people, a certain class of men that will have their power taken away from them in the offices they hold, aka state governors, are about to lose their overarching power over their states. ... And the perverted ambition of another class of men who will either hope to aggrandize themselves by the confusions of their country or will flatter themselves with fairer prospects of elevation from the subdivision of the empire into several partial confederacies than from union under one government. So what he's warning about in this paragraph is there are going to be people who want to stop this. And he's outright essentially slandering these people who are either governments or high-ranking officials who are going to lose their power when it's given to the federal government, or people who think, hey, I might be able to get some power in my state. And if I stand up to this Constitution and don't let it happen, people will respect me for stopping the big evil, and then I'll get a lot of power in my state. That's what Hamilton's warning us about. I've started going one sentence at a time. That seems to be the best way to go about it. This is the first one. We're figuring it out. It is not, however, my design to dwell upon observations of this nature. So I'm going to ignore those people. Okay? I am aware that it would be disingenuous to resolve indiscriminately the opposition of any set of men into interested or ambitious views merely because their situation might subject them to be suspicious. Oh, that's nice of you, Hamilton. They are very suspicious characters, whoever disagrees with the Constitution, but I am not going to just disagree with them because they're suspicious to me. Well, let's see. Let's see what he is going to do. This is a very long sentence. We'll break it apart. Candor will oblige us to admit that even such men may be actuated upon by upright intentions. And it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition, which has already shown itself, or that may hereafter make its appearance, will spring from sources blameless at least, if not respectable. Okay, so he's saying, I have to be honest, these people who are going to lose power, or these ambitious people, they're not doing it because they're evil. They're doing it because they probably think it's right. We can't get mad at them for doing what they think is right. And he says it'll come from sources blameless at least, if not respectable, aka George Clinton, governor of New York. And again, he's publishing these in New York, and they are addressed to the people of New York. And anyone tuning in, if you want to read along, there is a link in the description down below. But let's see what else he has to say. The honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. Okay, I guess I should have finished that whole sentence. The honest, again, these people, they're not doing it because they are led astray because even before the Constitution was revealed to the public, they were already nervous about what might be going on over there. Again, anyone tuning in, this is Alexander Hamilton in the first Federalist paper. Any questions? I'm happy to take them. So numerous indeed and so powerful are the causes which serve to give a false bias to the judgment that we, upon many occasions, see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude of society. So there are so many things going on instituting this Constitution which might lead people astray, that we might see people we very much respect, Governor George Clinton of New York, that even the very most respectable among us might be on the wrong side of this argument, despite being of the first magnitude of society. Again, that certain class of men that he's referencing in the second paragraph there. Nope. Highlight it. There we go. This circumstance, if duly attended to, would always furnish a lesson of moderation to those who are engaged in any controversy, however well persuaded of being in the right. So, you should never... This circumstance, if duly attended, would always furnish a lesson of moderation. Okay, so, hey, even if you think you are absolutely right, you should still take a second and think about what you're talking about. If you are engaged in any controversy, take a step back and be moderate. That's fairly good, humble advice, Alexander Hamilton. Feels a little irrelevant, but thank you for that. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are activated by purer principles than their antagonists. So, those who advocate the truth, just because someone's saying something right doesn't mean they're the good guys. Conversely, before he's saying, just because someone's saying something wrong doesn't mean they're the bad guys. Let's take a step back. Let's be a bit moderate. Let's have a conversation here. And let's remember that if someone says something that is right, they might still be a bad, on the wrong team. You know what I mean? You can agree with people, who you usually disagree with, basically. Ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives not more laudable than these are apt to operate as well upon those who support as those who oppose the right side of a question. So basically, reiterating what he just said. You can be the wrong person saying the right thing just as well as you can be the right person saying the wrong thing. Were there not even these inducements to moderation, nothing could be more ill-judged than an intolerant spirit, which has at all times characterized political parties. So he's saying right here what George E. Washington always goes on to say, we don't want political parties here. Political parties are just going to divide us. Factions, as they were usually called at the time, factions are just going to divide us. There's nothing worse than that, because you just get behind your party and you say what your party wants and you support your party whether or not you agree with it. It's interesting how that could still be a reflection of today, though we don't talk about modern politics here. Very interesting, because I should note that the Federalist Papers are the essence of American political thought. This is the heart. This is where American political thought comes from. Actually, after the creation of the Constitution, to be fair. For, in politics as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. In politics as well as religion, I'll be honest, I do not know the definition of the word proselytes. If anyone watching wants to throw that in there, I believe it's a religious word, but I'm not entirely sure of it. But fire and sword, I get. Don't get in, it's not worth yelling and screaming. You should talk it out. It's not worth just digging in your heels. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution. So yeah, stop yelling at people. Be nice to each other. We're not going to solve anything here. Thanks, Hamilton. Way to be such a nice guy to get us on our side. Now, I'm going to take a quick note. We do want to keep in mind that the Federalist Papers are propaganda. These are very intentionally being written to be published in New York to persuade the general public to support ratification of the Constitution. Calling the Federalist Papers propaganda to many of your ears might make you mad at me, but it is objectively true. The goal of these papers was to persuade the public. And he's starting off by saying really reasonable things. Generally, not a lot of this is very deep. It is just kind of yeah, there are going to be people against the Constitution, but just because they're wrong doesn't mean we should be mean to them. Thanks, Alex. You're such a guy. So next paragraph. And yet, just as these sentiments must appear to candid men, we have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this as in all former cases of great national discussion. So, despite what I just said, people are still going to be not cool about it. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. People are going to freak out that we are trying to consolidate all of the states into one government. Imagine that. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions and to increase the number of their converts by the loudness of their declamations and by the bitterness of their invectives. So, what he's saying here is important. He's saying that anyone who's against the Constitution, we will see, again, this is October of 1787, just 6 weeks after the Constitution is signed and published. And as he mentioned earlier, we already see people giving pushback against the Constitution. What he's saying here is, as we'll see from the Anti-Federalists, which they're not yet calling them Anti-Federalists, but they are going to try and trick the people by screaming the loudest and spreading the worst fears you can imagine. So, to this point, Hamilton has said, I'm very reasonable. We can't be mad at our opponents just because they have the wrong opinions, but they're going to be really loud about it, and they're probably going to be mean, and we shouldn't just give in to what they're saying and consider their opinions just because they're the loudest screamers. That's really understanding of you, Alex. I'm sorry, I might talk a little trash while we do this because it's fun. An enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of power and hostile to the principles of liberty. So, real quick here, energy. As we go through these Federalist papers, we are going to see the word energy a lot. Hamilton and later George Washington, not even later at this time, they used the words energetic government a lot. They wanted a government that could do things. They wanted the government to stimulate the economy. They wanted the government to accelerate the American empire they were hoping for. So the enlightened zeal that they're speaking of, an enlightened zeal will be stigmatized. So basically, these Anti-Federalists are going to say anyone who's coolly and casually, very reflecting on the situation and coming to the conclusion that this Constitution is impeccable, they will be made fun of by the Anti-Federalists. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented as mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of public good. Again, he's saying this is what we expect the Anti-Federalists to say. We expect them to prey on our fears and say that there is nothing worse than this Constitution that's going to come, tax you until you're broke, take the militia, and just suppress all of the people, and they're going to use this for their own gain, and it is going to be, as he says, at the expense of the public good. It is going to hurt the nation as a whole, because these people are going to be selfish about it, these Anti-Federalists. Just you wait, this is what they're going to say. It will be forgotten, on the one hand, that jealousy is the usual concomitant of violent love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is too apt to be infected with a spirit of narrow and illiberal distrust. That sentence was tough to get out. Reading 17th century language is fairly difficult. 18th century language is fairly difficult. Basically, he's saying jealousy is the unusual concomitant of violent love. I will admit, concomitant, another word I'm not sure the definition of. But in general, this particular section is saying that while we should be praising the Constitution for protecting our liberties and giving us this new promising future, the Anti-Federalists are going to try and make you scared of it. On the other hand, a very long sentence, let's get through it. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigor of government is essential to the security of liberty. That in the contemplation of a sound and well-informed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the specious mask of zeal for the rights of the people than under the forbidding appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. That's a lot. Again, he uses the phrase, where was it? Zeal. Right at the beginning. The vigor of government. a vigorous government goes hand in hand with energetic government, which we will be hearing a lot as we go through the Federalist Papers. It will be equally forgotten that a vigorous government is essential to the security of liberty. You need a government to do things because the number one reason we have a government is to protect us in a variety of fashions. And if you don't have a government that can do things, then that includes not protecting you, which is kind of the whole point, in Hamilton's opinion. That in the contemplation of a sound, well-informed judgment, interests can never be separated. The dangerous ambition lurks behind a zeal for the rights of the people. Then under the forbidding appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. So they will, again, be saying, it's more important for you to be scared of the dangers of government than it is for you to be excited for an energetic government. And that is a good way to get to the core of the debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists are scared of tyranny. They are frightened that this Constitution is a little too open-ended in a variety of areas. And Hamilton's point is, sure, it might not be perfect. What government is perfect? But we need a government, and we need it to promote our nation. Another long one. History will teach us that History will teach us that the former, which the former is a vigorous government. Okay. History will teach us that the former has been found a much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by praying in an obsequiescing court. That's a tough word. One more time. History will teach us that the former has been found a much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. Okay. Overturning the liberties of the republics. The men who have overturned the liberties of the republic, the greatest have by paying the court of the people. So the people who generally overthrow republics are the ones who are the best at scaring the people, is more or less how I read that particular section. Although, obviously, there's one word I can't handle in there. All right. Now he gets to his task here. What we're going to see out of these Federalist Papers, of which there were originally only supposed to be 25. In the course of the preceding observations, it has been my aim, my fellow citizens, to put you upon your guard against all attempts from whatever quarter to influence your decision in a matter of the utmost moment to your welfare by any impressions other than those which may result from the evidence of truth. Essentially, what I've been doing in this paper is to let you know that there are going to be anti-federalists out there who try and scare you away from this federal government, despite not having any evidence of truth. Though, it could be argued that many of the anti-federalists had pretty truthful points, to say the least. You will, no doubt, at the same time have collected from the general scope of them that they proceed from a source not unfriendly to the new Constitution. So he actually admits that the Anti-Federalists aren't necessarily against the entirety of the Constitution, and that's true. Most Anti-Federalists want some kind of consolidation. They want a confederation, as they would call it. As compared to the Articles of Confederation, they would like a little more power with the federal government. Yes, my countrymen, I own to you that after having given it an attentive consideration, I am clearly of opinion it is your interest to adopt it. So, oh, you know what? Let me restate this last one. He's talking about himself. I apologize. You will no doubt at the same time have collected from the general scope of them. Okay, so them is not the Anti-Federalists. Them is the words he's already written in this particular essay. They proceed from a source not unfriendly to the new Constitution. He's talking about himself with that line. Yes, you will no doubt understand that I'm saying I like this thing. And then he doubles down on that. Yes, my countrymen, I owe to you that After having given it attentive consideration, I am clearly of the opinion it is your interest to adopt it. Great. I am convinced, you can ignore this footnote here. I haven't yet included in the bottom. It was just correcting one spelling error, basically. I am convinced that this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. I affect not reserves which I do not feel. I like it. This is the best constitution in the whole wide world. You should definitely like it like I do. Okay. I will not amuse you with an appearance of deliberation when I have decided. I'm sorry, I forgot about this line. I'm not going to pretend I'm trying to figure it out. No, I know what's up. I've made up my mind. I'm sorry, I'm giggling. I feel like that's pretty funny. I frankly acknowledge to you my convictions, and I will freely lay before you the reasons on which they are founded. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. That's a fun line, Alexander. You know what? I might not agree with everything Alexander ever said, but he has a way with words. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. If you don't want to feel guilty, be direct. That's a fun line. All right. I shall not, however, multiply professions on this head. Okay, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. Basically. My motives must remain in the depository of my own breast. My arguments will be open to all and may be judged of by all. So I'm not going to tell you why I'm writing this. I'm just going to put my arguments out there, and you can decide if you like it or not. Again, this is written under the pseudonym Publius, because at the time, many people wrote under pseudonyms because they wanted to be judged on their arguments, not on who they were. They shall at least be offered in a spirit which will not disgrace the cause of truth. So I'm going to say it without lying as best I can. So good luck with that, Alex. All right. I propose in a series of papers to discuss the following interests in particular. The utility of the Union to your political prosperity. Why the United States Constitution will help you, the individual, get what you politically want. The insufficiency of the present Confederation to preserve that union. He's going to talk trash about the Articles of Confederation. No big deal. Even the Anti-Federalists did that. The necessity of a government at least equally energetic with the one proposed to the attainment of this object. The necessity of a government. Okay, so why we need, again, as I was saying before, you see him talk about an energetic government, a vigorous government. We are going to see that a lot as we go through the Federalist Papers. And not only that, as I said before, George Washington uses that phrase a lot. An energetic government, a government that can stimulate the economy, a government that can go out and defend us from invasion or conquer land, if that's the energy we're looking for at the time, or suppress insurrections or tax the people. This is what they wanted. And he's going to say that even if you don't like this Constitution, I'm going to prove that we at least need one as energetic as this. Because I'll remind you, at the Constitutional Convention, Alexander Hamilton pretty much, there's the one day where he talks for about 6 hours and stuns everyone in the room because he's more or less saying, you see, Great Britain, that's what we want. And everyone's like, I don't know if that's exactly what we want. So that's why it's interesting that he says at least equally energetic to the Constitution now being proposed to be ratified, because Hamilton very much liked an energetic government. He is also going to prove the conformity of the proposed Constitution to the true principles of Republican government. He's going to say why this is a Republican government, why you should not worry about it being too aristocratical, as many of the Anti-Federalists were already saying, and how it could lead to a very, very consolidated government. Going to prove that's not true. We'll see. It's analogy to your own state constitutions. He's going to compare it to the state constitutions, which, to be fair, was at the time very similar to many of the state constitutions. And lastly, the additional security which its adoption will... Oh, I need to highlight the whole thing. Look at that. The additional security which its adoption will afford the preservation of that species of government to liberty and property. Very important. That this new constitution will actually do a better job of securing your liberty than the Articles of Confederation combined with the state constitutions. So not just your liberty, your free, well, your liberty. There is a difference between liberty and freedom, but I'll use them interchangeably just for now. Will protect, this constitution will protect your freedoms and your property. Now, again, what's notable a decade before this is that in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson changes the very common phrase of life, liberty, and property to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But that doesn't mean people just forgot about it. People were very much concerned about their property. As you know, the Constitution, especially when it comes to slavery, but other forms of property as well, it protects what people own, and it will make sure no one takes your stuff. Better than the state governments. Is that true? I guess that's still up for debate, but Hamilton will get there. In the process of this discussion, I shall endeavor to give a satisfactory answer to all the objections which shall have made their appearance, that may seem to have any claim to attention. So, any of the objections being made by Anti-Federalists that are real objections, I will respond to them, and I'll try and disprove them for you. The ones that are not real, I won't disprove. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here. There are calls for a Bill of Rights, which is one of the most important ones. He puts off till the very last Federalist paper and barely even touches on it. I guess he didn't think that their biggest objection was didn't have any claim to attention. All right. Closing in on the end here. It may perhaps easy for me to say. It may perhaps to be thought superfluous to offer arguments to prove the utility of the Union, a point, no doubt, deeply engraved in the hearts of the great body of the people in every state, and one which, it may be imagined, has no adversaries. Basically, it seems ridiculous that I should have to prove that the Union is important, because most people do agree that the union of these states in some fashion is necessary. Even people who like the Articles of Confederation, even the Anti-Federalists admit that some form of union is important. But the fact is, we already hear it whispered in private circles of those who oppose the new Constitution, that the 13 states are of too great extent for any general system, and that we must of necessity resort to separate confederacies of distinct portions of the whole. Now, this is true. Many people at the time, there was a popular political theorist named Montesquieu who was operating a few decades before the Revolution, but who they reference, and we will see some of the Federalist Papers actually directly quote Montesquieu throughout these discussions. But the idea that a republic could really only work with a certain expanse of land and a limited number of people, or else the government becomes too distant from said people for the people to have any control whatsoever over it. Now, these whispers, as he said, were already around, and it's attacking it now. This doctrine, in all probability, will be gradually propagated till it has votaries enough to countenance its own avowal. For, I'm going to do this 2 sentences here. For, nothing can be more evident to those who are able to take an enlarged view of the subject than the alternative of an adoption of the Constitution or a dismemberment of the Union. So, just put that all together. He seems to kind of be attacking one of the Anti-Federalist arguments, one of the more important ones, real quick at the end here. He note that he says, people think we might have to break into separate confederacies, and they did. They thought New England might have to bounce over to one confederacy. I see you, John. I will get to you just a second. They thought New England might be one confederacy, the Mid-Atlantic might be one confederacy, and the southern states might be one confederacy because it was just too big a landmass. But anyone who takes a large view of a subject will see that the Constitution is necessary to hold this vast empire together, or the Union itself will disintegrate. Because if they are separate confederacies, eventually it'll be like Europe. There'll be a bunch of different countries that separate countries from that point forward for a few hundred years would go to war with each other for arguably frivolous reasons. And I'm just going to finish up here, Jonathan. I'm definitely going to check out, definitely going to reflect on your comment. Right. Closing out, it may, therefore, be essential to examine particularly the advantages of that union, the certain evils, and so the probable dangers to which every state will be exposed from its dissolution. This shall be accordingly done. So what he's closing on here is, hey, in my future papers, I'm going to talk about why if we don't do this constitution, if we don't unionize, so to speak, then every state will face different dangers of a wide variety of shapes, and if we don't take care of each other, we're all in trouble. Publius. All right, John, what do you have to say? I love your input concerning the 2021 Declaration of Independence. I have it. The 2021 Declaration of Independence. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what you're referencing. If it's 2021, I will probably not talk about it because I like, we'll see. You know what? Send it over to me. My email address is in the link in the description. Send me an email. I'll read it. If it's not too modernly biased, I will be happy to talk about it. Absolutely. I do my best to avoid modern politics here, while I do have my own personal opinions. American history is for everyone, and if I start discussing my political feelings, then no matter what side of the aisle I might be on, I will make people feel uncomfortable because either they're on the other side of the aisle or they're on my side of the aisle, and I'm not doing it right. So I do try and avoid politics at all costs if I might. That being said, I don't fall very well in either camp. That's probably more than I should say. As most Americans probably don't fall really directly in any camp. And that's it. That is but please send me the email. I'm really, really interested. I have not seen the 2021 version. I did a few years back write a modern language version of the Declaration where I kind of translated kind of what we're doing now, but instead of discussing it, I typed it out just to make it easy to read. I did the same thing with just the grievances of the Declaration one year, where I just took the 27 grievances in the Declaration against the King and Parliament, and I just wrote them out in like one sentence in modern English, which seems kind of childish, but there are some people who found it helpful. Actually, it's the one thing that gets Googled. Like, it's the one thing I've written that gets like 30, 40 hits every day, years later, for some reason. So I guess people want the easy version, which, again, I understand. This language is super difficult. That's why we just read through Federalist #1. So I can help you translate it, because I've been reading it for several years, and while I'm certainly not an expert in any fashion, you know, I have done it enough where I can understand it and pretty quickly translate it to modern English for you. So thanks, guys. As always, if you have any questions, I see a few people popping in. We just finished up, so I do apologize. But definitely like and subscribe, because I am planning on doing these at least once a week. Probably two a few weeks, because, again, it's 86 Federalist papers. It's going to take a year and a half, which I already read these and wrote reviews of them over the course of a year and a half, but that ended a year and a half ago. So over the last 3 years, it has been done. So this rereading is a lot of fun for me. Go to my website, Founder of the Day, link in the description if you want to read through some of those reviews. Although, truthfully, after going through them with you guys, I'm sure I'll find I want to update them. So we'll see how that goes. I also have been putting out Anti-Federalist papers every Friday. For anyone new here, every Friday, the last year and a half since I finished the Federalist papers, I've been going through the Anti-Federalist papers. I did Brutus. It's one of the most important ones. And right now, I'm in the heart of Federal Farmer. So, again, if that interests you, please check it out. It is a lot of fun. Sorry I keep clapping in front of the mic. I'm very excited. Take a sip of water, because I've been talking for about an hour now about the Federalist Papers. Again, let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I certainly hope you did. If you would like for me to continue doing this, let me know in the description. I did a few other things. William Pierce's character sketches at the Constitutional Convention. I had done George Washington's Rules of Civility. So I'm not just going to only do the Federalist Papers. I'll spice it up a little bit, but you know, I think this is a fun exercise. It certainly is fun for me to like read it and say it out loud. And you know, there's a handful of you watching, so thank you so much for coming. Again, you have any recommendations, questions, concerns, anything like that, I am always happy to answer. I am happy to discuss. I love talking about the American Revolution. That's why I'm doing this. So I need to find some kind of sign off. Colonel, hey, thanks for showing up. George Washington had it right. Well, I'm not entirely sure what you're referencing there, but let's say, let's give him like 83% I'll give him to 83% when it comes to being right. Is that fair? Oh, I just lost like 50 followers. Not giving Washington 100%. He was a human being. We're all going to have to deal with that. Again, questions, comments, concerns, I'm happy to take it. There is a link if you want to read through this in the description below. I just put this up on my website, but there's no real direct link. I'm actually going to go through and put all of them on there over the next few days. I'll probably create a page. I already have the Federalists page, the Federalist Papers page on my website, but that's from the art reviews I wrote. So I'll find a way to get both the original texts and the reviews I wrote on there somehow. Whew, that's a lot of talking. I think we're done here. I really appreciate you guys coming. I'm going to go live on Thursday to do the weekly wrap-up of the Founders of the Week, all Founder of the Day, every day, 7 days a week. Friday, we're going to play trivia, so that'll be fun. Oh, and look forward to this. I'm a little bit late on it this year, but every year I do my Founding Fathers Fantasy Draft Rankings, and I'm thinking it's going to be a week from Saturday. I will have the Fantasy Draft Rankings. It's just something fun I did. It's fantasy sports season. So every year I just kind of list the top 100 founders as not from importance to the revolution from my perspective, which you can obviously argue. It is a subjective list. And surprisingly, it does change every year based on what I learn. I learned so much over the course of the year doing one person every day that it changes. Some people go up the list. Some people, unfortunately, get smudged a little bit down. I wouldn't be surprised if Rufus King gets a little bump this year because we were talking about him just recently. So I'm going to go, guys. I don't have a sign-off for these yet, these read-alongs. Thank you for reading with me. I could go with the classic, I am your humble and obedient servant. And I'll be back with the founder for you tomorrow.